Good afternoon and welcome to the AICPA Town Hall. We hope you all had a great Thanksgiving week. We've got a great program for you today. There's a lot of important updates. I'm Eric Auskerson, one of your hosts. So let's get right into it, and we're just going to cover a couple of housekeeping items to kick things off. You all know you can earn CPE. You've got this great toolbar at the bottom, which allows you to get your CPE certificate. You can also click on that orange arrow and download today's materials. We've got 50 slides in this presentation. We've got FAQ documents in there, so a lot of great resources. And you can also use the blue question button there to ask questions. And we've got a team here that will be responding to them. So please bring them. Please bring your questions to us. So here's our agenda. We're going to kick it off with some high-level comments, and then we've got some really important updates related to what's happening in D.C. Some important legislation is progressing related to the stimulus relief bills, and we're also going to get into the state of deductibility and some matters with the IRS. We'll cover some of our latest recommendations. And we have been doing a lot of special topics. We've got a great special topic today with one of our innovation partners, Pascal Finette. So we'll be getting into that. And we'll also be closing with our usual open forum session. So once again, I'm Eric Auskerson, one of the leaders at the AICPA. I lead the CPA.com subsidiary. With us is Pascal Finette, who I just mentioned. He's part of Singularity University, one of the true innovation experts in the world. I think you're going to be very interested in his comments, in particular, as you look out towards 2021. We've got the leader of the profession, Barry Melanson, who's the CEO of the association in AICPA. And we've got Lisa Simpson, who you all know, and her team leads firm services at the AICPA and have been putting together a lot of these fantastic resources. So what we do every week is bring to you the latest information that we gather from all of these stakeholders. Today is December 3rd. April 3rd, 8 months ago, is when the actual PPP rollout started. We have learned so much over the past 8 months, and there's a lot that's happening right now. And we're going to be leveraging everything that we've learned, and we're going to also leverage the relationships that we have in place with SBA and Treasury, the lenders, the payroll providers, and all of you to really help guide you over these next couple of weeks, because we think these next couple of weeks are going to be very, very important as we now advance with the potential of a PPP2 bill. So here are the hot topics. We've been watching all of you on social media. You're paying a lot of attention to these. It's all about the PPP expense deductibility issue, the IRS ruling that came out a couple of weeks ago. Huge grassroots effort from the AICPA that Barry's going to be talking about. The loan necessity questionnaires, the 35009 and 3510 forms. We'll dig into that a little bit. And what we're so excited about is this bipartisan progress on the Stimulus Relief Act, and we're going to be talking about that. And why we're so excited about this is because of what we are well aware of, and you're all well aware of. If we do not do something related to business relief, there's going to be millions of jobs lost. And this article here in The Hill, which is based on some data from Gusto, predicts that between 1.5 and 3 million jobs will be lost if some form of business relief is not passed. So that's one of the big drivers that's making our leaders in D.C. Take action. And we're very encouraged by what we're hearing from McConnell and Pelosi and the leaders. So we're gonna get into this now. Last week, Mark Peterson on the last town hall said the smoke was clearing after the election. What we're saying today is we feel like the sun might be rising as we begin to really dig into this Senate Gang of 8 proposal. So I'm going to bring Barry now into the discussion. He's been connecting with the AICPA advocacy team and staying current on all that's happening. So Barry, why don't you talk a little bit about these three different proposals, bills that have been initiated, and where things currently stand. Welcome.
Thank you, Eric. Great to be with you. Great to be with all of our members and guests here that are on this town hall. It is sort of a breakthrough week, and literally some breakthroughs that are occurring in the last 24 and 48 hours, actually some discussions that have been ongoing in the last 2 hours. We basically have been sitting in a situation with a pretty big gap, a big gap to close to be able to get something passed. We had a $2.2 trillion HEROES Act. We had on the Senate side, a more modest $500 billion HEALS Act, and not a lot of movement that was taking place, but some hope for movement when Mark was with you last week or 2 weeks ago. The issue, of course, is that now, as has been referred to as a Gang of Eight, which is it's a bipartisan group of what's called problem solvers, people who are generally in the middle of the political spectrum trying to get things moving. And they have articulated a compromise bill of a $900 billion, $908 billion to be exact, where Speaker Pelosi has indicated and Minority Leader Schumer has indicated some willingness to work. They use different terminology on it, as a starting point, things of that nature. Majority Leader McConnell in the Senate has talked about working from that, but he's really probably still at maybe a slightly lower number. So there's still some need for compromise. There are a few items that are open out there as it relates to the, for instance, liability reform and liability protection, which has been one that has been very, very critical on the Senate side. How much support for state and local government. And obviously what we would be interested in is a series of things related to additional funding, so-called PPP2, probably with some more specifics as it relates to how you qualify in that environment. The deductibility of the expenses related to the first round of PPP, those elements being, that is a provision that is in this compromise language. And so if it moves forward, then those types of things will be addressed. There's a couple of timelines here. It could be addressed as early as the 11th or so, maybe with some passage in one of the other houses, 9th, 10th, 11th by signing. That's probably the quickest. It could go as part of a continuing resolution to fund the government, or it could go as a standalone piece of legislation. While there are still some unanswered questions, my message to you is that the likelihood of something happening and happening in December has certainly gone up dramatically. And we would be on record supporting the so-called Gang of Eight movement forward. Our position has been there needs to be a compromise. As Eric just articulated, this is about small business, in a lot of ways, small business survivability, those jobs that he quoted. And this is a critical element to be able to move forward. I want to reiterate that in this bill is something that we have been articulating is the deductibility. We believe that was the intent of the original bill. We were the first group to say the deductibility needed to be addressed, signing on to then a standalone piece of legislation by Senator Cornyn. It was in most of the versions that have been out there. And we've actually, as Eric alluded to, we've called on members, state societies, to really activate the grassroots to be able to get this done. And the leadership of Congress all along has generally been there, but it's not done until it's in a bill that's passed. And we're pretty close to getting to that. And then just this week, a group of 560 plus national and state-based organizations signed on to a letter arguing for, pushing for the deductibility to be addressed. So that's a big number from a coalition perspective. And, clearly we would be hopeful that this compromise would move forward and would include the deductibility portion.
Well, thanks, Barry. And what I want to let everybody know is right now, people are asking, where can I find out more about this bipartisan proposal? What you see here on the slide is what has been released. So that's the details so far. We are aware that it's right now, currently, the current plans are for it to include PPP deductibility language and the simplified forgiveness below 150K. But what we want to discuss now is what does this mean and how should you start thinking about this? Here we say the time is now. We've been talking a lot about this over the past couple of months, and it does seem like something's going to happen. Things could always change, but right now we think we all want to get ready together, and we're mobilizing. We're mobilizing our capabilities to be ready to support you. So we're going to stay current on this legislation. We are going to have a town hall next Thursday, because we think by next Thursday we will have the bill and we could review more details with you. We will continue to provide updates on social media. We think you need to stay up to date on this potential timing, the timing of when things could occur. We are rather confident that it will not happen sooner than December 9th to the 11th, like December 9th. The House votes on it, the 10th, the Senate, and potentially the 11th, it's signed into law. That'd be the earliest. It could easily slip out to December 18th. What we also do know is that once this is signed into law, that the Treasury and SBA are going to move fast. They moved fast back in March. It was March 27th when the CARES Act was signed. A week later, April 3rd, the implementation started. We think it's even going to be faster than a week this time around. And what you can do is you can start proactively planning with your clients. You could take today's information and have an email newsletter to them related to this, or even a call, and you can start identifying who will qualify. There is going to be some additional criteria, a reduction in revenue. Right now, our understanding is will be only businesses with less than 300 employees will be eligible. It looks like there could be some eligibility for 501c6s. So we don't know that yet, but there's potential for that. And what you can start doing is start getting ready with the information. So Barry, Lisa, anything you'd like to add to kind of the comments on this slide?
Lisa, you can go first. We didn't have your audio on, Lisa. I'll jump in here.
I was answering questions, so I apologize.
Okay.
I was on mute. No, I just think we're really excited. We're waiting to see those details, and are just anxious for you guys to be well positioned to start working with your clients and get ahead of the game. We think it's going to move fast.
I would jump in on that point, and let me just share with you, we got feedback from a business organization represents small businesses, the CEO of that today, in fact, and he was just blown away about how many of his members, small businesses, were informed and were reacting to some of the issues because of the information they were getting from their CPA firms. Now, I think that is a huge testament to the influence point that this profession has with those millions of small businesses. And I think this week, leading to that 9th through 11th, or if it slides past there, you have that opportunity to be a provider of thinking processes with your clients right now. Those that are not having, didn't suffer a decline to that 25, 30%, probably aren't going to be qualified for a second round of PPP2. You can help them move off of that. You could easily take some of the material that we have provided to you here and do a Zoom-based, if you will, client webcast and give them the leading thinking. I think you can provide some rational thinking to make sure people don't overreact to news reports since it's not finalized yet. Let it play out. You can be the voice of reason for them. But maybe the most important thing is you can have them prepared, because really, if we go back to the intent of this is to help the survivability of small business, just like the intent was in the original PPP. And really, your relationship, if you're in a public practice, if you're in the company, your importance in the company as CFO or controller or in a particular position gives you really the ability to be having these discussions. And then when the bill is passed, as Eric said, it's going to move quick. Now, the downside of that, just to be transparent, some of this quickness is going to come probably in a bad time in the calendar for many of you in December. But there's no telling how quick it will be or how much it's going to be laid up against holidays and things of that nature. But businesses are going to have to move quick. And I think the value proposition that CPAs bring is to help clients be prepared, to move quick, and to make the right decisions on their survivability.
Well said, Barry. And one thing we've been talking a lot about is capabilities. We're encouraging the firms to put in capabilities, processes to support PPP forgiveness, as well as this next phase, PPP2. We don't want to be doing it just with PDF documents. You want to use tools. And I'm seeing questions come in on, is it going to have similar frameworks? And the answer is yes. It's going to have similar frameworks to PPP1. That's our current understanding. So a lot of the techniques of calculating, looking at, determining the loan amount using, 2 months of eligible payroll costs, all of that's going to come back. And I'm sure there'll be some tweaks, and we're going to really work hard to getting that guidance out to you immediately in the form of tools. So let's keep going. We got a lot to cover here. So Barry, everybody saw this come out earlier this week. All of the PPP data has now been released. In April, we stated that we really felt, due to FOIA, this would be released. And now, within 2020, all of the data has been released. In July, they just released the specifics with PPP loans above 150K. Now it's been released in entirety. We just were on a call recently, and we heard about some, people are going to be running reports. They're going to be looking for, political figures. So there's going to be people writing articles. There already been a couple of articles written this week. So highlighted in this slide is how we feel about it. This wasn't unexpected. Don't overreact. And Barry, we got a lot to cover, but just, you want to make a brief comment here?
Well, yeah, I would, don't overreact is there. Look, I think this is a time for people, your clients or your employer, to have thick skin. Yeah, that could be an article written in a local publication if you're a high profile company, but you have to come back to what the intent of PPP was. And that was to keep people employed, to keep businesses in business, and to be a tool, a very powerful tool to keep the economy running in a positive way. And it's pretty much met that. And yeah, people will second guess. We told you to be prepared from that, but businesses were impacted. There was huge unknowns back in that March and April timeframe, and people took, did their best efforts to do that. Overwhelmingly good people running businesses in a good way. That's the message. And it is not time to panic or to overreact to a few stories or articles that may come about. News cycles move very quickly. We're sitting in a situation of a transition of administrations. We're heading to a holiday period. We're going to have new legislation. We have COVID outbreaks. We have vaccines coming out. There's a lot of things in the news cycle. And I think we can't lose sight. And I would encourage all of the members here with their clients and employers to not lose sight that PPP was about keeping those businesses in business with a degree of uncertainty that existed at the time. That was the intent of Congress. And that's how we communicated, and that's how I know CPA firms work with their clients in that process. And so if people want to second guess, it will be second guessed, but it is a second guess, and it will move through, that news cycle relatively quick.
Well said. It's like look at the forest through the trees. This was the biggest business relief package in the history of the United States. It really kept the economy going. The firms played a huge role in helping these businesses. So, Lisa, there's questions coming in about the loan necessity questionnaire. Some of the points coming in right now are saying, hey, they think there's a lot of valid rationale for additional questions, which we agree with. But there's also additional perspective that we want to provide the audience. So, Lisa.
Thanks, Eric. And I think Barry's comments tie in perfectly to a conversation about the loan necessity questionnaire. Part of our concern, and just as a reminder, these are only for PPP loans of $2 million or more, but part of our concern is that it is a substantial burden on the PPP borrowers to comply with these questionnaire requirements in 10 business days. But there's also, we have concerns about the period of the questions that they're asking about. So they're not asking what was the position of the borrower at the moment in time that the application was filed. So we have submitted some letters to Congress, Treasury, SBA officials. We issued a formal comment letter just last week before Thanksgiving, so you'll be able to find that if you're interested in it. But also, just before Thanksgiving, I think the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, the SBA released information to lenders about the loan necessity questionnaire process. There's nothing really new or very detailed. It's not instructions to give to the borrowers about some of the intricacies of the questions they're asking, and simply more of a framework of how the process is working. We covered a lot of this a couple weeks ago on the town hall. Just wanted to throw some bullet points up there for you to remind you this is one step in a process, and it is designed to help the SBA prioritize which $2 million and above loans they want to look at a deeper level. So we laid out some of our considerations around those, both the loan necessity form and the disclosures of the information that Barry and Eric just talked about. And I think Eric gets really excited when we talk about boat dealers. So, you know, we gave an example last time about the difference between what a borrower's position was at the time of the loan application, and if that borrower was a boat dealer versus someone who was making masks or gloves or other PPE. And our suggestion is that the SBA should be looking at a self-certification of assessment of need and asking for a narrative conversation about what was going through the borrower's minds at the time of the application. Barry, any additional thoughts there?
Well, I think it's what's going through the mind. We were very upfront saying that people should be contemporaneously documenting what a business was thinking about, what the concerns were. And I think the feedback we've gotten from Treasury, and Lisa and Eric have spoken to it, indicates that they want to be sensitive to that. I think that the example, Eric's boat example, is one that really applies to just a significant number of businesses. There was huge uncertainty. Yes, it ended up turning out that people did a lot of boating in a COVID world, but you couldn't predict that when people were making the applications and they were worried about their businesses surviving. And you can think of industry after industry after industry that would probably be applicable to in a comparison basis. And so I think submitting that documentation, there is limited characters to be able to do that, but following up further in the loan forgiveness of what was being thought about in that time, and is our belief that that will get heavy consideration. It's part of appropriate checks and balances in this, that's okay, but ultimately the end result has to be that you can't come back in 2020 hindsight and sort of move away from the intent of what Congress and the administration was seeking to achieve at that point in time.
Yeah, well said. And I think most businesses fall into that category of boat dealers. A boat dealer did not know in early April what their outlook was. The world was shutting down. They had great years. They're going to get those loans forgiven. We've had discussions, with government officials on that. There's a couple of businesses that you knew you were going to do well, and this again is really about just the businesses above $2 million, because that's really where the liquidity questions come in. So we're going to keep going, Barry. There's been a lot of talk with the town hall attendees about IRS issues and COVID relief.
Yeah, Eric. So let me just start off by saying we have a fantastic relationship with the IRS, and Commissioner Reddick is a hands-on person. He understands from his own experiences just so much of the real world of taxes. But we disagree with the IRS on this issue of blanket relief or easier ways to relief on the COVID environment. Our tax system in this country is a voluntary tax system. And, we have been on this issue really dating back to a letter on July 2nd that we issued to the Treasury and the IRS calling for blanket relief. IRS told us in response to that they weren't going to do it. And then we focused on some ways to make it work. There are so many inefficiencies in the system. We're hearing from members about, our clients have paid checks and they haven't been cashed months down the road, and then penalties are coming out. You know, the inability, not because they're bad people or they're wanting to do it, but the inability of dealing with the volume that the IRS is having to deal with right now. And we just believe there needs to be a simple process in which the COVID penalty relief could be achieved. A blanket would have solved that particular problem. Now, one of the feedback items we get is, well, you know, people can abuse the system. We're sitting in a situation today, yes, some people will abuse the system. That's always the case, no matter how you go about putting a system in place. But we're sitting in a situation today that is the greatest societal impact in any one of our lives. And if we think about long-term, the efficacy of a voluntary tax system, which is what our system is, that the ability to deal en masse or close to en masse with these fact patterns that people have in a very difficult COVID environment would seem to be, to us, a step that really paves the way for an efficient system in the future. Losing faith in the system, having difficulties in the system that are unwarranted doesn't help in the next year, or 5 years from now. And so our belief is that there needs to be a simple process. Now, we are escalating this to Capitol Hill. We would expect that the IRS will be getting some bipartisan letters, as some people would say, a strong letter to follow. We think there'll be some strong letters. We think that the interest of many in Congress have been piqued on this issue. This is their constituents that are having these problems. Again, it's not that people are trying to create these problems, but we ought to be trying to find simpler solutions to alleviating those particular problems. And that's the world that we're in now. We're also looking at different options from legislation. This is not typically something that would get passed through legislation. This would typically be something that's through interpretive language at the IRS or Treasury. But we are looking at every option to get this rectified. Frankly, finding a solution to this, even if it still might require practitioners to have to make a call on behalf of their clients, which we know can be frustrating, but a simpler system to solve this particular problem, frankly, it's in the best interest of the IRS, it's in the best interest of the federal government, it's certainly in the best interest of the taxpayers, and it's certainly in the best interest of the preparers as well. And even if you want to put preparers to fourth on that line, it seems like a rational, simplified way that's efficient to get these COVID potential penalties in a COVID environment waived and moving forward is in the best interest of really all of the parties.
Well, thanks, Barry. And we can talk, there's a lot more materials available to the town hall attendees on this topic. So, Lisa, we're just going to move right in and let you just kind of cover some of the latest information.
Yeah, we get lots of questions about how is the application for forgiveness process going at the banks, and we got some numbers a little bit before Thanksgiving. As of November 22nd, 11% of the 5.2 million loans had been submitted by lenders to the SBA. So lenders get the applications for forgiveness, they make their decisions, submit that to the SBA, so the SBA will pay the lender the loan amount and the interest on that. So 11% of the number of loans have been submitted to the SBA, and 15%, that's 15% of the amount of loans made. In talking with lenders today, they are cautioning us that there are no rhyme or reason or patterns or themes in that they can figure out yet in terms of whether or not the SBA is processing the forgiveness and paying the lender. Sometimes it's taking 90 days, sometimes it's taking a shorter period of time, sometimes it's taking over 90 days. That 90 days is being interpreted by the SBA as a guideline, not a rule. They're also telling us that the SBA is occasionally making requests for additional information over and above what the borrower was asked to submit to the lender. Certainly that we know that's going to happen for the $2 million and above loans, but this is also happening for the loans under that amount as well. So right. We know they're moving. And
we're finding out there's a lot of errors. Not really probably with CPA firms supported, but the banks are finding out that there were errors in some of the original loan applications. That's all being uncovered now as part of the forgiveness process.
Yeah. And this is one of the most frequent questions that we get. Is it time to apply for forgiveness? And, we think that it's important for the CPAs to be asking their clients, are you ready to apply? Here's how we can help you. We can do different levels of service. So asking CPAs to be proactive in talking with their clients about whether or not it is time and the level of involvement that they're asking for from the CPA. Some of the factors are they trying to sell the business? Do they want to get the loan off the books? I talked to a borrower earlier in the week who had over $2 million loan, and they just wanted to try to get that off the books as quickly as possible. Do they need to make headcount reductions, and so they want to end any further FTE requirements? And obviously, we're approaching the end of covered periods, especially if you got your loan earlier on in the process and you took 24 weeks. We're getting close to the end of covered periods. So we would have expected the volume of applications to go up now that we have the IRS deductibility issue, their very clearly stated position. But now we're getting questions about the Gang of Eight proposal to simplify forgiveness, and would that impact the timing? So on that, right now, again, as we said earlier on the show, 150,000 is what we're hearing. We don't know what that looks like, streamlined, automatic, simplified. So we'll continue to keep you posted on that. We do understand that the tax planning issues can be a challenge. I saw that come in through the Q&A earlier. Eric's talked about capabilities and building out your capabilities within your firm. So we wanted to remind you about the CPA loan portal. There is a free version if you're in business and industry and you're just doing your employer's loan forgiveness application, and then there are other versions for CPAs. We're excited to announce some new enhancements to the portal, and you'll see those on the screen. We've added a new payroll processor that if you're in an enterprise version or premium version, you can upload reports from paychecks, and those will be parsed into the calculator. I spent about 2.5 hours going through the portal yesterday, and it's just so cool. The functionality of it, the ability to upload the AICPA loan forgiveness calculator and have it automatically bring in all of the detailed calculations. They were laughing at me because we got to one of the fields and I'm like, where did that number come from? It's magic. And it's because it's coming through uploading the AICPA calculator. So it's really cool. And we're building in additional supporting information into the tool to help keep those guardrails around the process that are so important in firms. And you'll see some of the other capabilities.
Just two other comments here. One is Paychecks was just integrated this week. It's already got Gusto, ADP to come. There's a list of like 7 payroll companies, another 5 coming in. So that's more automation. And then just on the dashboard capabilities, the administrator can see, if you're a mid-sized firm, all of your current applications, where they currently stand as you farm them out to different areas of the practice. And there's more flexibility on editing and deleting. So today it's about the forgiveness application, and tomorrow it's going to be about PPP 2.
Yeah, so there's a lot more functionality that's been built in if you haven't looked at it in the last couple of weeks. All right, I think we talked about the fact that lenders and the SBA are encouraging CPA involvement in the process. So we've been developing a statement that CPAs can consider. It'll be integrated into the tool very shortly, and you'll see the draft language that we've got there. It's optional, but we do know that lenders and SBA truly understand the value that CPAs are bringing to this process. And Eric, I am not seeing, okay, now I see the slide, thank you. So we've seen these conversations as we've talked about the IRS deductibility issue. So we just wanted to very quickly hit on what's going on around filing, but also around tax planning, because I do know that I've talked with several borrowers and their CPAs, and they're just kind of scratching in their heads around how do I do year-end tax planning? If I'm a C Corp or if I'm a PSC, how do I plan if I don't know what's going to happen ultimately with this deductibility issue? So again, we acknowledge that that's a frustration, and we certainly hope that the advocacy efforts, the grassroots efforts that you've been so key in, will get that movement around deductibility. It's in this Gang of 8 proposal that we've seen, and we'll certainly keep you posted on that. A teaser for the 17th town hall. Dan Knoll was on with us a couple of months ago talking about accounting for PPP loan transactions. I've given you just a quick scenario of the 4 options that have been outlined with some links to some of our resources. But Dan's going to join us again in a couple of weeks, and he'll give us a deeper dive as you approach year-end financial reporting. And we've made some minor tweaks to this because there are some updates around Main Street lending and some details around EIDL that we've added into the resource slide. So just wanted to leave that there for you to consider after the seminar.
Well, thanks, Lisa. A lot of information there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to step up. We're going to step out of all of this technical guidance and what's happening in Washington, D.C., and have a great discussion here with Pascal Finette, because he's someone who's been working with AICPA and CPA.com and many of the firms for a few years. And he really helps us think differently about navigating the future and putting together frameworks to think about it. So welcome, Pascal. I'll hand it off to you and look forward to this discussion with you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Eric. And it's really beautiful and wonderful to see all of you again. I have to say, listening into the conversation we just had, I really need to take you out of the ground level, the hard plowing of the field, all the way up to 30,000 feet. And to talk a little bit about the future and the way we're seeing the future. So I hope I provide a little bit of relief for you. This is the moment where you can lean back a little bit, widen the gaze, and just see the future a little bit differently. So I want to address, of course, the elephant in the room, and I think we all feel this way. 2019, I was reflecting on this the other day. It really feels like me, this flushy little puppy, and we have these beautiful memories of this. And then of course March 2020 hit, and not just your businesses, clearly our businesses, many of our clients' businesses. We work with typically privately held companies all around the world, and utter chaos just emerged. And that is, of course, on one hand, incredibly discerning and causes mayhem for many of us, but also looking at this from the lens of a futurist, it actually points towards an interesting future. And this is where I have to admit that as a futurist, I get actually quite excited about this. Because here's the thing. The way we looked at the world for decades, pre-COVID, is we thought about the world in these 3 time horizons. And basically, every large management consulting firm out there has their own version of this. This is the particular wording from EY. They like to talk about what they call, and I really like the labels, they talk about the now, the next, and the beyond. And the idea is that, first of all, the now is, of course, right here, right now. And arguably, every company is good at that. Otherwise, you wouldn't exist. The next is the 2-year in-between period, so 2 to 3 years, depending on your industry. And then there's the beyond, and the beyond is the future. And the future, we like to talk about the future a lot, and the future for us was always the 5 or 10 year out there. And the whole point was always to say, you need to look at all 3 time horizons at the same time, and if you can afford it as an organization, you need to invest into those. And I think this is true for both the profession, for you as someone in the profession, as well as, of course, for your clients. Now, here's the interesting thing which happened with COVID. And I do think this points towards a new future, a very different future. And it's this idea that what used to be distinct time horizons has collapsed into a singular point in time. What used to be the 2 time horizons of the now and the next is the right now, right here. And I'm pretty sure we all feel this. And clearly the first half an hour of this call was all about this craziness of the now and the next collapsing into a singular point in time. And then what used to be the future, the 10-year out, is now really only the question of what happens beyond COVID. And that leads to interesting outcomes. And on a very high level, it leads to a world where uncertainty increases. And we clearly heard about lots of uncertainty with PPP. As a recipient of PPP, I can tell you it's a total nightmare on the client side. It's really hard for us to deal with. We have no idea how we actually get this into and out of our books, all that good stuff. But here's the thing. I do believe that uncertainty will be with us for the time being, and it will not go away, and it will likely even increase. Now, here's the challenge with uncertainty. In a world of uncertainty, you don't have the answers anymore. And that is discerning, because the way we were brought up, the way our schooling system works, the way like university works is we get scored on having the right answers. But in a world of uncertainty, we don't have the answers anymore. And that becomes very uncomfortable. Here's an interesting exercise you can do for yourself. And I recommend bring it to your clients when you talk with your clients about uncertainty. The scenario is the following. Imagine you're on your way to a client meeting, important client meeting, and you are going to hit traffic. So I used to live in Silicon Valley. I'm on Highway 101. I'm hitting traffic. Now, two scenarios. Scenario number one is you sit in traffic and you just know you will be late. 20 minutes, whatever the time is. Scenario number two is you sit in traffic and you're wondering if you could make it, if you could just like squeeze in on the left lane and get across this awful driver right in front of you, and you might just make it. Now the question is, what is more uncomfortable for you? What causes you more inner turmoil and pain? And we've done this exercise hundreds of times, and I tell you, the answer is always the same. About 2/3 of people really do not like the wondering. And that points towards a human point. We don't like uncertainty. Now we need to get good at being okay with uncertainty, because it will stay with us. We're living in a world where complexity increases, global complexity. Without a doubt, we've seen this. If you have clients who are, for example, being affected by the breakdown of the global supply chains, or you've got clients, and maybe you, who suddenly found themselves thrusted into a world where you have to do remote work. All of these complexities are increasing, and it also points to a world where our ability to control this world decreases. And that, I do believe, leads us to a really important point, because I do think now is the time more than ever, and it is the time also for us in the future, to really think about what are the skills for us which we need to bring to the forefront. What are the management skills? What are the operational skills? What are the strategic skills? And again, I would encourage you to think about this not just as a question for yourself and your organization, also a question for your clients. And this is, I do believe, where we as trusted advisors to our clients can actually shine when we have these conversations with our clients, admitting that we might not have the answers anymore. And you already heard Eric and the crew talk about, we don't even have the answers about like PPP and like what happens on the Hill, at least for now. So the way we like to look at this is that we think about the world in these three horizons, or these three layers. We talk about the self, the other, and the world. World is what happens broadly in the world. This is you keeping an eye on, say, for example, what the legislation is which comes out of Washington. Then you've got the question of other. Other is the question of what happens inside of your firm and what happens inside of the firm of your customers, of your clients. And then self is what happens to you. And I do believe that if you want to be successful in this world which we are now moving into much faster than ever before, you have to work on all three layers at the same time. Now, I want to just give you a last quick comment about the future. And truly, the future is invisible. And, I'm part of the futurist community, at least at the fringes of it. I kind of hate that term, actually, because there's these futurists which go out there and they tell you they know what the world will look like. They tell you what the future is. That is their job. And I can tell you they're all lying to you, because you can't know. The beauty of this is, though, that it opens up a whole new horizon of opportunities if you accept it, if you're okay with being in the uncertainty, in the complexity, because it means that every single day you get a chance to rewrite your future. And here's a fascinating thing, and I'm pretty sure you see this with your clients. Clients tend to fall into two camps, by and large. There's the people who are like, they're just running around like chicken, and everything is awful, the sky is falling. And then there's the other ones, the entrepreneurials, who look at this and say, man, this is clearly hard and it's heartbreaking. But at the same time, it opens up a whole huge amount of new opportunities. And the way you want to think about the future is with this model. This is what we call the cone of uncertainty. This comes out of the futurist community. And the idea is the following. Of course, you know what happens tomorrow with high likelihood. And you have a good sense what happens in a week from now. And you've got somewhat a sense of what happens in a month from now. But the further out you go into the future, the wider the cone of possible opportunities becomes. And I do believe that our role as trusted advisors, as business people ourselves, is increasingly to understand what this cone looks like. What are the boundary conditions of this cone? What is the space of possibilities? And inside of this space of possibilities, which again widens as you go into the future, there's a smaller space of probabilities. These are the more probable outcomes. And then it becomes our role as technologists, as leaders, as trusted advisors, to chart our path inside of that cone of probabilities. That is the opportunity space. And one thing I want to make sure you understand, and again, this goes back to the point I made earlier about uncertainty, is that the way you do this is you define your North Star. You define the goal where you want to go to, and then acknowledge and be okay with the fact that it is not going to be a straight line. A friend of mine recently described this to me as what he called the drunken walk of the entrepreneur. You know where your North Star is, you know where you need to go, but then you need to acknowledge the fact that, you're a little tipsy-turvy. You're like moving, you're swaying a little left and right, and, like you get hit into the face every once in a while by like yet another PPP, deadline extension or some weird paperwork you need to fill out. But that's just the nature of it. And then my very last point, and if you've ever seen me at one of the beautiful events we did with AICPA and CPA.com throughout the last couple of years, we like to talk about the exponential curve. Technology moves on these curves. I want to point out one thing, which is the early stage of that curve. This is where the real opportunity lies. And the good entrepreneurs today, they look at these curves and ask themselves an interesting question. And this is a quote I got directly from one of the leaders over at Bill.com. And she said to me, Pascal, what I do think what happened with COVID is that COVID took the inevitable roadmap and accelerated it by 10 years, the inevitable roadmap. And that's the early part of that curve, the red part you see here. That is the changes we're seeing, and then COVID has brought them forward. And again, my invitation to you is, I know it's incredible painful, like no question. Like, trust me, I'm going through this together with my CPA as well on the back end. But at the same time, become a little bit excited about the future, because there's a lot of opportunity which will open up for us. So with that being said, let me get back to Lisa, Eric, and Barry, and see what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, and Pascal, what I want to say here is that what we just did in 10 minutes is so important for this audience. Today we've got 6,700 attendees, and I actually think for next week we'll take these 10 slides and share them as a single resource which you can share with your clients, because this is really what 2020 has all been about. It's been about complexity, not having control, working on the advisory function that's so important for the firm. It's been a defining year for the firms. And now as we go into 21, we're having a lot of firm discussions, and the opportunity is incredible as they need to help their clients adjust their business model. People are talking about 5% growth, 5% GDP and higher in 21. So this is important. We've got a lot of great comments, a couple of comments saying, let's get back to plowing in the PPP. But it's good. It's good to kind of step out. This is very intentional. Barry speaks to Pascal all the time. He helps us think through things. So great bringing you to this audience. Barry, a comment, and we're going to then get in. We got more to cover here, so we're going to keep the program going.
More plows to be brought out.
Yeah. Well, hopefully not, Pascal. I think of it as a four-legged stool in the work that Pascal does with us, and that is, you couldn't be in a better position as a profession than when you have uncertainty and complexity tied with trust and a skill set that when there is clarity, we can get to the answers. If you think about that, we tend to, people get nervous about uncertainty and complexity and think it's just you. It's not just you. As Pascal said, it's the entire environment. And so for our profession, with that trusted role and the ability when there is an answer, like deductibility of PPP, to be able to have that answer for the client, that's a huge value proposition, but it's just enhanced when you can talk about the uncertainty and the complexity, and you might want to add speed into that environment, in which you can help people think about a different future and doing it in a way we're trusted. That's a pretty stable and powerful four-legged stool, is the way I look at it.
Well said. We're getting, just tell the audience here, we're sitting here, there's close to 7,000 of you out there. We've got 500 questions, so questions are coming in, and a lot of comments just on how a lot of you appreciated that kind of step out, the 30,000 foot view of 2019 looking into 21. So we've got a lot of tools here. Pascal's done seminars with us, with the major firm group, with small firms, mid-sized firms. He plays a big role with digital CPA. So thank you, Pascal. Here's where you can find more information. We got a lot of free toolkits available for all of you to leverage. So this
Eric,
slide.
if I can, Eric, let me jump in. Yep. Can I jump in for just a minute on this? Because PCPS, our firm services team, has had the opportunity to work with Pascal this year, develop some resources that PCPS members can access to help think about the implications of future disruptions, think about how to design distributed workforces. I'm saying that because that's Pascal's preferred term. You might think of it as a remote workforce. How you can design effective agreements around how the distributed teams are going to work. Some interesting exercises to help challenge hiccups in how a team processes. So just some really great resources that we've been able to work with Pascal on, so that firms of all sizes can leverage his amazing insights.
Thanks, Lisa. We'll have to add a special resource slide on all of this. So we've said it all year long. This has been a defining year. In 100 days, the first 100 days of all the business relief, 10 years of relationships were built. But the time is now. The time is now to get ready for PPP2, to continue to support your clients on forgiveness, and to think more about business model reviews as we potentially enter into a 2021 that's going to show this incredible GDP growth. So with that, we're gonna open this up to our open forum. We've been leveraging a lot of your questions throughout. So Lisa, do you want to pull a question for us?
So we're getting a question about what 2021 is going to look like in terms of IRS and state filing extensions. Do we think there's going to be an appetite to extend those deadlines? Barry, I know that's something we've been talking about internally.
Right, and here's the uncertainty point that Pascal just made. It's just too early to address that, let's just say, April 15th deadline issue. There will be discussion about that. It would take action in Washington, D.C. You're going to have a change in Treasury with a new administration. You're going to have different thinking that comes about from that standpoint that we have to sort through. We obviously, where does the economy go? What, do we, does the vaccine start to loosen up lockdowns, or do we have more lockdowns? Those types of things are uncertain, and they will have a big factor as to the willingness to move that date. I will say to you that there is a complexity factor in moving the date in this time versus in 2020, and that is whether or not one is, frankly, the governments have put, state and local government have put and federal government have put huge amounts of money in play. And so there is going to be the inflows of revenues is a very important part, particularly at the federal government level. And then the interaction with states, due dates of the states, is a big issue as well. States all went along with that process last year or in 2020, and it's not certain that states would all go along with it in this environment given their own situation. So there's a lot of moving parts that have to be addressed in that process. You can rest assured we will be heavily engaged in it.
So just questions coming in about, what will be more of the particulars related to PPP2. I think you can leverage a lot of the basic frameworks of PPP1 with some additional criteria. One thing also, questions coming in about, lenders. And there's one question came in. Some lenders have said you have to, submit your forgiveness application by December 31st. That's not correct. You have 10 months after your covered period. But just talking about the broader strategy related to supporting your clients with PPP2, you should think about Plan A and Plan B. And we've been talking to firms about that. And with the platform that we're putting in place, we do that CPA loan portal. We will be able to support PPP2 loans, and that's something that you can consider a resource for your clients, and also wherever they got their original loan could be a resource as well. So Lisa, I'll let you maybe pull another question.
Let's see. We're getting, I think you mentioned this, Eric, we're getting a lot of questions about what the revenue reduction tests might look like. So I'll just encourage you to be patient, a framework, and we don't know how the particulars of revenue reductions are going to be calculated. So we will tell you everything that we can as it comes out. And of course, we'll do our special town hall next week once we know more details. But Pascal, we're also getting, I'm going to throw you an easy one, Pascal. What are the words behind your head? You have no idea how many times we've gotten that question.
Seriously? Okay, so it is pretty funny. That is actually
like a wheel of fortune.
I know. For some reason, this software we're using here is like flipping rest assured, it's actually written in the right way. It's Be Radical. It's the company I founded a couple of years ago.
See, I told you it was an easy one.
We're going to move to the kind of review the resources. Thank you, Pascal. Barry, thank you for your input here, and we'll probably be leveraging you again as we move to year end. And Lisa, thanks. Here's all the recent town hall series. We're getting lots of views on these. You can send these links out to anybody. They can watch them. You don't get CPE on the archive, but you absolutely can leverage the information. We also have our SBA Resource Center, which has calculators, a lot of guidance, links to the CPA loan portal. There's questions about the 3509 and 3510. At least I think have we put those forms on the Resource Center?
I'll have to check on that one. Sorry.
That's something we can probably add, because those are only provided by the lenders, but we do have access to them. We can get those up. Here's this document in your materials, the frequently asked questions. Thanks for all of your questions today. And what we're also highlighting is the social media. We appreciate a lot of the tweeting of this information. So every week we're gonna highlight some of that. We try to stay active on both LinkedIn and social media with the breaking news, and we'll continue to do that over the coming days and weeks. Here's another good resource tool about upping your advisory game. So you can find out more information here on that link. We already talked about Digital CPA, which is coming up next week. This is a very progressive group of firms that have been attending this event on an annual basis. Here's some of the presenters. Pascal's partner, Jeffrey Rogers, will be there. And Mark Koziel. A lot of you haven't seen Mark Koziel in a little while. He'll be presenting with us. For those of you that want an easier way to track your CPE, here's a free tool that you can leverage. Use the Town Hall 20 promo code, and this will automatically take your weekly Town Hall certificate as well as other CPE that you generate and track it for you. There's a great 2-minute video that gives you an overview of how all this works, and it's at that link there at Learn More. So once again, we are going to have a special town hall next week. We're in a sprint week. A lot of information's coming out. We think by next Thursday we'll have a lot of information about the state of this legislation. We will review that with you in detail. I know there's been questions coming in. Will we auto-register you? Yes, we will. So we're going to auto-register people. So emails will be coming out related to that. And then after the December 10th, the next one is on December 17th. You can forward this registration link to others. We'll stay tuned with you on our social media vehicles. And we greatly appreciate this time with you. We learn a lot. So thank you. Thanks for the comments. Have a good week. And that's all for now.